90 days in a stunning relationship update. Fiancé Sophie Sierra reveals who she is dating after igniting romance rumors with Pedro Jimeno. Now that Rob Warren is set to star in a new spin-off in which he romances Jennifer Tarazona, Sophie Sierra, star of 90 Day The Last Resort, is revealing who her new partner is. Born in Spain and raised in the UK, Sophie is a content creator who relocated to the US to husband Rob Warren. Rob cheated on Sophie with someone on Instagram, which made Sophie angry. After Sophie couldn't move over Rob's infidelity scandal, she eventually left him. On The Last Resort, they made an effort to get back together but ended up splitting up. Following her romance speculations with Pedro, Sophie's relationship status update indicates whether or not she is dating him. A reel that was first shared by Mariatos.ped was reposted by Sophie. The video reveals a woman's comfortable bedtime ritual as she gets ready to go to sleep. "Every night after curving every guy because I'm a lover girl," reads the post's description. The woman has no interest in wasting her time or having a roaster, according to the caption. Sophie found the reel so relatable that she chose to share it on her Instagram stories as a way to express herself. According to Sophie's message, she is not yet ready to date because no one she meets is interested in committing. Sophie wants a man who can demonstrate that he has her undivided attention and won't cheat on her because she was cheated on in her previous relationship. According to reports, Sophie and Pedro went on dates, and he traveled from Atlanta to Austin to meet Sophie. However, it seems that the romance ended abruptly. Since then, Sophie has made it known that she plans to relocate to Los Angeles. But Rob has been residing there ever since they parted ways. Jennifer and Rob appear to be dating on 90 Day Hunt for Love. However, Rob and Sophie had resumed their relationship when filming Between the Sheets about the same time the show was shot in Mexico in October 2024. Even though Rob and Sophie were still legally married, it seems that they would have both been unmarried by that point. Is Sophie's most recent relationship status update a sign that Rob and Sophie should get back together? Given that Rob will be paired with Jennifer on 90 Day Hunt for Love, which premieres in a few weeks, Sophie appears to be attempting to highlight her own dating situation. Since then, Rob and Jennifer have not revealed any indications that they are actually dating, and Sophie's unexpected update may be a sign that her troubled marriage is about to improve. Almost 2 years have passed since Sophie left her marriage, but is a happy ending in sight for the couple from 90 Day The Last Resort. But Chantel Everett was already awake, even though the sun had only begun to rise over Atlanta. As she gazed out of her apartment window, the bustling metropolis below served as a reminder of the turmoil within her. 3 months had passed since she and Pedro Jimeno parted ways, yet she still couldn't stop thinking about him in spite of their disputes, betrayals, and grief. Pedro was focusing all of his energy on his real estate career while residing in a modern high-rise across town. He appeared to be doing well on the outside, confident, driven, and smiling on social media. But he was unable to block out Chantel's voice, particularly from that last evening. The living area was a complete mess. A glass of wine broke. Pedro remained stunned. "You weren't with me at all, were you?" Chantel sobbed. "I made an effort, but we never found harmony with your family," Pedro yelled in a passionate Dominican accent. "You allowed your family to control you," she yelled back. "And now you're treating me in the same way." That night, Pedro had left. They were both unaware that it would be their final encounter. Chantel was startled back to reality by an unexpected tap on her door. It was River, her brother. With a stern expression, he held out his phone and added, "You might want to sit down." There was a video on. It featured Pedro with a woman in a cafe, the same one Chantel had been suspicious about months prior. They were holding hands and giggling. Tears clouded Chantel's eyes. She said, "So it's true." Chantel made travel arrangements to the Dominican Republic because she was determined to find answers. She hadn't been there since the notorious family vacation that ended with slammed doors and yelling matches. She wanted closure now, though. When Pedro saw her, he was stunned. His voice was low as he said, "What are you doing here?" She looked into his eyes and whispered, "I need to know. Did any of it happen?" Pedro averted his gaze. "Yes, initially. Then, however, everything was different. It was too much. The pressure, the charges, your family spying on me. Her voice was shaking as she added, "You could have fought for us. But you didn't." Lydia, Pedro's mother, showed up at the door abruptly. She yelled, "What is she doing here?" Chantel's shoulders went square. "The truth is why I'm here. For me, not for your blessing." Lydia said something in Spanish and scoffed before turning to leave. Pedro and Chantel went outside. The Caribbean air was heavy with unsaid words as they stood silently. At last he murmured, "I did love you, Chantel. But love isn't always enough." Chantel gave a slow nod. "Perhaps. However, I was worthy of more than betrayal and secrets." Her heart was broken, yet she felt lighter as she left. She had persevered through the storm. Chantel began a fresh chapter in Atlanta. Despite their dramatic nature, she relied on her family when she launched her own health clinic. After spending some time in the DR, Pedro eventually made his way back to Atlanta, a little wiser and older. At charity functions, get-togethers with mutual acquaintances, or even the grocery store, they would run into each other once more. They looked at each other constantly and occasionally smiled politely. However, the fire was extinguished. But 3 years had passed since Pedro Jimeno and his wife, Chantel Everett, relocated to Atlanta in order to start a new life. Once a fast-paced romance on 90 Day Fiancé, their story had devolved into anarchy, envy, and family strife, which were all made public on the family channel. However, nobody anticipated the outcome. For weeks, Pedro had been silent. Their household had become intolerably tense. He avoided discussions, arrived home late, and kept his phone close at hand, secured with a password Chantel had never figured out. Constantly wary, Chantel started her own research. She monitored Pedro's car's GPS, called his place of employment, and even looked into their shared bank account. She noticed it at that point. "Ours $265,000 is missing. Lost. Disappeared overnight." Pedro had insisted on beginning their investment in the Dominican Republic with the money they had saved in order to build their future. Chantel's hands trembled. She cried out, "Pedro," from the other side of the flat. Slowly, as he had anticipated, he came out of the bedroom. She yelled, "You stole our money. What on earth is the matter with you?" Pedro remained silent. He just carried a packed luggage to the door. "I'm leaving for home, Chantel. You didn't think I was real." This was something I had to do for my family. She was hearing things she couldn't believe. "You believe that stealing what we created and betraying me is for your family. How about me?" He hesitated. "Chantel, you were never with me. You were with your family all the time. Long ago, this marriage ended. Then he went away." However, the tale did not stop there. 2 weeks later, Chantel took a plane to the Dominican Republic, determined to get her money back. She was even more astonished by what she discovered. Pedro used the stolen funds to open a posh bar and grill in his sister Nicole's name. Chantel stormed into the tavern on opening night, brave and angry. She shouted, "This place was built with my money," in front of scores of astonished visitors. Pedro came up behind them. "You ought not to have arrived here." Chantel reached into her purse and took out a flash drive. "The bank transfers are with me. Everything is mine. My lawyer will be contacting you soon." The result was a court struggle that pulled the Everetts and the Jimeno family into yet another televised storm. Hidden truths exploded, betrayals came to light, and Chantel emerged triumphant in court. In her favor, the judge ordered Pedro to refund the entire Rs. $265,000 plus damages. Reporters swarmed Chantel as she left the courthouse. "What are your thoughts on winning?" For the first time in weeks, she grinned. "I didn't simply prevail. I regained my power." Chantel used the court settlement to create her own fashion and wellness brand months later, and her tale became one of tenacity, atonement, and overcoming treachery. Pedro, his bar silently closed, and he vanished from view. Consequently, the most startling chapter in the Chantel family's history came to an end. But Chantel Everett had first met Pedro Jimeno in the Dominican Republic 6 years prior. What began as a fast-paced affair soon evolved into a complicated web of heartbreak, ambition, family strife, and love. On 90 Day Fiancé and later The Family Chantel, the world had followed their journey. Fans were unaware of the off-camera story, however, which Chantel hardly ever discussed. Chantel made the decision to move out of Atlanta after their divorce was finalized. It was impossible to bear the memories attached to every part of the city, where she took Pedro home for the first time, where her family questioned him over dinner, and where they fought, reconciled, and fought again. In an effort to start again on her own terms, she relocated to Miami and enrolled in a prominent international nursing program. Pedro, however, remained in Georgia and increased his real estate endeavors. Both the way things ended and his friendship with Chantel's family had left wounds. He secretly continued to wonder if they were battling for the same goal or merely against one another's expectations. Chantel got a letter a year after the divorce. It's not an email, not a direct message. Pedro's handwritten letter. Chantel, I finally worked up the nerve to write this, if you're reading it. Not to beg for your return, not to bring up old issues again, but to apologize. I should have fought for us, but I didn't know how. I hope we can talk without the cacophony if we ever cross paths again. Pedro. For weeks, the letter remained on her dresser. Chantel happened to be strolling along the same beach where she and Pedro had first met while on a volunteer medical trip to Santo Domingo. It was similar to a loop closing. She had changed, more powerful, autonomous. However, she was also receptive to what life had to give. She didn't know that Pedro was also in the Dominican Republic, seeking to get back in touch with his origins by going to see his mother. Outside a Santiago community center, they bumped into one another. A pause, followed by a grin. Neither of them turned away from the past, which stood between them like a wall. For the next week, they talked, truly talked. Not a producer. No pressure from relatives. Only two individuals attempting to comprehend what had transpired and their new identities. Chantel shared with him the times she had self-doubt. Pedro acknowledged that he let resentment to control him. They realized what they had lost, wept over regrets, and smiled over old recollections. They didn't rekindle their romance. They did, however, extend forgiveness. Chantel released her memoir, Love Across Borders, 2 years later. It was about identity, cultural conflict, and what it meant to love someone from a different world. It wasn't only about her connection with Pedro. In the meantime, Pedro started a nonprofit organization in the Dominican Republic to educate young immigrants on their legal rights in the country. They no longer shared a romantic relationship, but they continued to encourage one another's aspirations virtually. Love stories don't always conclude with a happily ever after or a wedding. Sometimes they conclude with two people walking in opposite paths, having grown and found closure, and feeling thankful for the adventure they shared. Because Chantel and Pedro's true story has nothing to do with a reality program or a visa. It was about two hearts that dared to cross two worlds and, in the process, discovered who they were. Greetings, dear viewers, greetings from my channel. I'm Amelia. I hope you're having a great day. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the video.